So first of all, I want to really thank for the organisers for putting this on and for funding our bid. It's really exciting for us. We're so looking forward to getting more into this. Our project is on looking at analysing the challenges facing cooperative food delivery platforms and looking to co-design solutions to those, working with our partners. So let me just first introduce us, the team. So I'm a researcher at the University of Exeter, and I also do some work for a think tank called Autonomy. And my co-researchers in this, Phil Jones and Julian Saravo, are researchers at this think tank. And together we're hoping to work with cooperatives to try and design some solutions to challenges that they're facing. So here are our two project partners for this. So we're working with two main groups. One of them is CoopCycle. Now, this is a European-wide federation of cycle couriers who are basically organizing different cooperatives in many different cities. It started in France, but it's now spread to lots of different European cities, and they're starting to open up some partnerships with UK-based courier cycle cooperatives. We're also working with Cooperatives UK, who are the peak body that do a lot of advocacy and support services for cooperatives in the UK. And so they're our two main kind of institutional or organizational partners. And what we're doing is we're working with them to provide resources for a whole bunch of emerging cooperatives that are starting to pop up in lots of cities across the UK. So what we're finding is that during the COVID pandemic in particular, a lot of these solidarity movements started up where people started volunteering who had bicycles and cargo bicycles and who were helping deliver food to people. And through some of these grassroots movements, people started to think about, well, what kind of cooperative business model could emerge from this? How could we keep this going? How could we scale it up to be something more? So some of these cooperatives had started before COVID, but quite a few new ones have started up. And we're starting to hear of new ones popping up every day in a whole variety of different cities. So we're in contact with a lot of people. We've started doing our interviews and we've started kind of collectively talking about what we can do as a team and as a network. So it's really exciting, and we're really looking forward to keep going with this project. So what are we doing then? There's a couple of main goals of the project. So a lot of this in the beginning, it's about getting those soft skills and developing these networks to try and think about co-designing what the actual problems are. So we're in a lot of discussions with these cooperatives. Next week, we're going to host a kind of get together with all of the cooperatives from across the UK. And we're going to discuss what resources they need. And so one of these that we've started to think about is a how to launch guide, basically giving cooperatives every detail they need and all of the tools and the resources to basically not only to start a cooperative, but to have a good idea of what kind of challenges they'll face. We're going to be gathering some data from cooperatives about times, how many cyclists you need, what to expect in terms of initial capital funding and all those kinds of things. We're also going to be hoping to use this data that we're collecting, that currently we don't really have any information like that in the public domain because a lot of these are just starting out. But we're also hoping to feed some of this through in a policy paper to help address how local governments in particular, but also perhaps at a national level in terms of regulations and capital investment, how government can assist and foster the development of a cooperative industry, particularly in the food delivery sector. And so finally, we want this project basically to be the start of an ongoing network. We would like to get all these people in conversation so that they're basically on a WhatsApp group or on a Slack group together, and they're able to share resources, advice, and things like that. So that's the main goals that we want to get out of this project. So the food delivery economy is growing rapidly. It is a kind of multi-billion-dollar market. We're thinking that by 2023, it's going to be worth £6.7 billion in the UK alone. It is also a fiercely competitive market. So it poses real challenges for emerging new players, particularly those that adopt the cooperative model and aren't willing to kind of offer really poor wages or offer super kind of competitive prices to block out the competition. So the food delivery economy is growing fast, but unfortunately, it's led to a lot of negative externalities. Now, we've all seen the news stories of how precarious and difficult the employment can be in this sector. People are working under gamified conditions. They're not, they don't have traditional employment contracts. They don't have sick pay, holiday pay, all of that. So what is the solution then? How can a cooperative completely change the traditional model of something like Deliveroo or Uber Eats? So what we're thinking is that the benefits of the cooperative model is that the cooperatives themselves are worker owned, worker managed. You get autonomy and self-determination over how you work. You can basically take part in the decisions over the direction of the cooperative. You get to give yourself and others fair working conditions. One of the cooperatives we're working with wants to pay a London living wage for every hour that a rider is logged on. So we're getting decent pay, decent conditions, and a complete change to the exploitative and the extractive nature of companies like Deliveroo and the current for-profit platforms in this industry. So we're really looking forward to it. We've got 5 partners already that we're working with, and they're basically at different stages of development, and they're trying to do very different things. So what we're starting to see is that there's a real diversity across these different cooperatives about what they intend to do. So on one end of the spectrum, you'd have someone like the Doorstep Collective in London who are really starting to think about how to challenge Deliveroo at their own game. And they're really keen on basically like giving people an ethical alternative to these platforms that does on-demand delivery, that will compete at peak hours, that will compete in the same markets and the neighborhoods. Now, that's one version of what we're seeing. On the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing something like the Your Collective, who have tried a bit of that, but actually think that going for a much smaller market, going for scheduled deliveries, going primarily business to business, but a little bit of business to consumer, that's another option that's available. And we're seeing a whole different range of models, all stretching in between those two. So it's really interesting to see what's on offer, and we're hoping that our how to launch guide will basically give people a kind of snapshot of what they can do and what's on offer, what kinds of pricing structures they'd need for each option, and so on. So some of them are working with this software that's made available by CoopCycle, one of the partners. So essentially, this is kind of like, you could envisage it as like a clone of the Deliveroo software. It allows you basically to have a food tech side, which is customer and restaurant facing. People can enter in their orders and their deliveries and their menus. A customer can kind of take a pick from what they want. Now, this is not as flash as what you might see on the Deliveroo side. It's quite basic, but it also gives you a side for the cyclists and for the courier service to see the map and to schedule deliveries and to kind of do that side of the operation as well. So it's very exciting. CoopCycle are happy to give this technology and you allow the use of this software to other cooperatives who take on this model and take on the kind of ethics and the principle and the spirit behind it as well. So we're really excited to see what comes, what we're going to do with this project. Yeah, thank you for listening to our presentation. I'm going to stop sharing now. Thanks.